Hi and welcome back to the Polymer Clay channel. If you're new to my channel, my name is Gail. I make things from polymer clay and then I'll show you how to do it. So today I'm going to talk about the Fimo that I use, tools that I use, cool things you can do with it, and really how to start as a beginner. So here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to make a start with pretty much everything from left to right. That's probably the easiest way to do this. Okay, so going through different types of clay, there is an absolute ton load. It's really difficult to work out, you know, what you're going to want, what you're going to need, what colours you're going to like, and all that sort of stuff until you know what you're going to make. However, if you don't know what you're going to make, start with a small kit. So what I'm going to do is just go through some of the stuff that I've got here. This is a very small amount of the types of clay that I actually use. So firstly, we'll start with Fimo Classic. You won't see Fimo Classic in shops anymore because they actually discontinued it. Fimo Classic is the hardest of the Fimo clays in the world, and it takes an awful lot of conditioning, and to be honest with you, it's really hard to work with, and it does put a lot of people off. If you do buy Classic Fimo, it's still workable, it still will work. You just need a bit of oil and things like that, but you will need to put in the effort to condition it. It got replaced by, you'll notice a difference in size here. They used to be 350 grams, now they're 454. Fimo Professional is very similar to Fimo Soft in terms of how soft it is. This, I can already feel that it's really soft, as I've been using this as well, whereas this you can't even push in the corners. So the difference between these two, I'm really not sure why they stopped Fimo Classic, but it could be because it was really hard to condition. I still have loads of this and I do use it, but you just have to spend more time conditioning, and if that's not your bag, you need to go for something softer. Which brings me to Fimo Soft. Fimo Soft is pretty much the same as Fimo Professional. It's really soft as it says, and quite often it's right ready to go with very little conditioning. The downside of Fimo Soft is sometimes it doesn't hold its shape, and it can be quite porous, so if you put a fingerprint in it, it can be quite difficult to get that fingerprint off, and sometimes it doesn't hold its shape like you'd want to as well. So that's that one. So there's absolutely loads here that I've got. Fimo Effect. Fimo Effect is really nice. You'll find that quite often it's got something cool about it. So for example, this one here is a glow in the dark Fimo. This one's gold. This one's got some glitter in it. And this one, for example, this one's got a little bit of glitter in, and then it's got some sort of black dots in it. It's quite a nice effect actually. It's called marble, but it doesn't look like marble in the packet. So, and then this one here has got sort of glitter in it. So you find quite often that the effects are, when they're brand new, are generally soft as well. So they're quite nice to work with, and they come in more fancy colours. Then we've got Souffle. So I don't use a lot of Souffle, and also Sculpey. Again, these are the softer of the clays, and I do like them. I like all polymer clay. It really does depend on what I'm making as to what I will use. If I want an easy time of it, I'm literally going to use something like Souffle or Primo, or perhaps even Cernet. Now Cernet, that's an interesting one. Cernet goes on like icing, and it's not published yet, but I do have a video coming out purely on Cernet and what I've done with it, and I'm not going to lie, it was quite difficult from the opposite way around. So it was so soft that it was almost like icing on a cake. You pull it and slightly, and it thins down in one area and thick in the other, so it was quite hard to work with, but I like the flexibility of that. So I'll know now that I can use that for something that the shape doesn't matter so much, or something like that, or I just want a translucent look. It was very good for that. You could roll it thin, but you do have to sort of have the patience for it. So in terms of all the different ones, I am more of a Fimo fan, I have to say, but then that's more because that's just my brand and what I've bought in the past, and I am kind of branching out here and there with other brands. Underneath here I also got Super Sculpey, and again this was great, but I did find it quite soft to work with. I notice a lot of comments of people in sort of chats and things like that on Facebook that they say that things are really hard to condition sometimes, and I always recommend Super Sculpey for that. I think the colours are more limited though in Sculpey and Super Sculpey. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there is a wider variety in colours for the Fimo brand. Okay, so if you do struggle with conditioning clay, Fimo accessories, they do have a mix quick. Now this is really great because you just mix it with it, and as it says, and it will soften it right up. However, I do recommend, rather than rolling it up like it suggests in this photograph here on the outside, I recommend chopping it all up and putting it in that way. Other option is to use basic baby oil. That works an absolute treat. And again, I would chop it up completely, so it's not something that I would roll in or anything like that. I would literally take a tissue blade to it, and I'll go through those in just a minute, and you know, it will condition. If you do put too much oil in, obviously with this you can't take it out, but with baby oil you can. You can just roll it in printer paper and it will leach out the oil and go back to not being crumbly, but it will go back to being a lot more sturdy. Whereas if you use the Fimo Mix Quick, obviously you can't get that out, so it does make it a bit more difficult. Okay, so I've got all my tools out. This is generally what I use on a fairly regular basis. So firstly, I'll talk about cutters. They're really important to start off with to get, because if you're not sure what you're going to make, the quickest way to get a shape out of polymer clay is to use a cutter. I like hearts, they're quite sweet, and you can use all sorts of different brands, all different styles. Some are plastic, but I do recommend getting the metal versions of them. These are brilliant to start with. So going on to colouring polymer clay, you can get these things, they're called mica powders. Mica is a very fine powder, very high pigmented, so very high colour, and you can paint polymer clay any colour you like. How it comes out depends on what colour you started with. So for example, these colours wouldn't look the same on black as they would white, and different colours bring out sort of different parts of the clays as well. If you didn't want to buy mica powders, they're not particularly expensive, but again, with clay there are very many colours, and the more you buy, the more you'll find. So if you didn't have mica powders or didn't want to get them, you can start with a very basic little eyeshadow kit or blusher kit. Now these I use on my little dolls. I do make little angels from time to time, and I use these to blush up their little cheeks, and it works absolutely brilliantly. And this is just from a cheap makeup store, so it probably cost about £1 or something like that. Works absolutely brilliantly and doesn't come off once the clay is baked. So as we're talking about baked clay, if you've made something and it turned out horribly, I've got many a project that's turned out awful, so I put them in a bag, come back to them a few months later, and then when I want to do something cool, you can grate polymer clay into soft polymer clay and create a really pretty design. I have actually done this as well on one of my other videos. I did it for my bookmark video and it turned out really nice, but it reminded me of snow. So it would be quite good to, if you want to bake clay, white piece of clay, and then grate it onto your Christmas scene or something like that. I really do need to stop mentioning Christmas. I did this a little while ago in one of my other videos. I really got to stop doing this. But it was really good for that anyway. So I do recommend these, but they are definitely not an essential. Okay, so moving on to the tissue blades. I love these things. They are absolutely brilliant. They are very sharp, and as you can see, very bendy, and they are absolutely brilliant with getting things off tiles. I do work on a tile, and then I have similar tiles, smaller ones and even miniature ones, that I like to transfer all my projects on and then bake them in the oven on them as they are. However, if I do make something on this main tile here, which I do sometimes, I then need to scoop it off, and the best thing is a tissue blade. There isn't really a great deal that I've tried in terms of using tissue blades that can substitute it. I have tried scooping them up with a little craft knife, but it does make marks, so I do recommend having a few tissue blades. Okay, moving on to all these fancy tools here now. Some of these are by Sculpey Studio, so for example this one is, so is that, and so is this one. Let's get them all around the right way. So these have a ball at the end in different sizes and then a rubber part at this end. Now, as you'll see in also one of my other videos, I do some sculpting sometimes, and I use these three particularly when I did my seahorse video. I found this absolutely brilliant. These have got like a flatter part, so these are silicone, so they're really easy to sort of move around. This is rounded and more pointed, and this one is slightly bigger and more pointed. And then at the end here they have round balls, and they're absolutely brilliant at making texture marks for mica powders and any other glitters and things like that that you want to put on as well. Okay, these 5 are my Fimo Professional tools. Now, I do really like these, but you can get other tools. Sculpey Studio aren't as expensive as these ones, but I really did want to try them out because they all have different sizes, obviously. So I'll start with these ones because they're both with the silicone ends. So they've got a slightly bigger one than the Sculpey Studio. So this is the same sort of shape, but a lot bigger. And again, they have a pointed one on the end here, and these are absolutely brilliant for making sculptures and things like that. And these are more heavy, so they're more weighted, and to be honest, with a weighted tool, you find that you hold on to it easier, to be honest. So that's those two. For some reason I've got 2 of the same ones there, I've just noticed. So these ones are also by Fimo Professional, and again, this one's a dotting tool. So this one has a very, very small dot on this end here, and then a rounded one here. But this side is flat, so it will actually make different marks on the clay. And these tools are all about making marks in clay, smoothing and sculpting. They're really good for stuff like that. Now, I do recommend this. It's a drill piece at the end here, and it's absolutely fabulous at making the most perfect hole ever. So this is definitely what I would class as a good investment. And then at the end here, a little scoop for glitter. Okay, so moving on to the craft knife. This one's my favourite. It's quite heavy. It's a really nice weight to it, and it just means that I hold on to it well. I do point with it, I do move things with it, and I also, when I do my lettering, it's one of the best things that I've used. And the good thing about this is you can unscrew it here, take out the blade, replace it to a nice sharp one, and then pop it back. This is one of my smaller ones. This one is very, very sharp, so I'm quite careful with this, and I do prefer the bigger one, but sometimes if I'm doing very fine work, this is excellent for that. And again, similar to my other one, you can unscrew it here and replace the blade. Another fan favourite of mine is Dentistry Tools. Now, I found these on Amazon. These are absolutely fabulous. They're not very expensive, but they are pointy and you can sculpt with them. You can make lots of great marks in them. I have used this quite a bit just lately. They're great for mixing as well, and I'll come on to mixing Fimo in just a moment. This one's got more point to it here, and it's sometimes great also for just moving things around that you don't want to touch with your hands. You'll have seen with this one in my videos quite often. This is my little scoop for glitter. I absolutely love this. It's got quite a nice depth to it here to pick up the glitter and to tap on. Okay, this brings me to the acrylic rollers. Now, I absolutely love these things. I do a lot of rolling by hand. I do have a pasta roller, but I don't use it as much as I perhaps should. It would probably make my life a lot easier, but I do love these. One thing I will say about acrylic rollers, they are acrylic, so if you leave them for a long period of time near polymer clay, they will actually eat into the roller itself, and then with that, obviously, you'll end up with chips in it. So polymer clay does eat through anything plastic, so be careful when you've made something. Don't box it up with little polystyrene peanuts, because over time the polymer clay will leach into those peanuts and unfortunately make a bit of a mess. So I'd always recommend keeping acrylic rollers separate. Okay, moving on to my red plastic tools that I absolutely love. These are by Fimo. You'll have seen me use this one quite often. It's almost like a spatula, so it's great for mixing things and also great for making little marks as well. Now, these are sharp for plastic but not sharp to cut, so I love that part of it because I can make lots of textures, as you can see from all of these different ones here. And they're great also if you've got a little one who wants to get into polymer clay but you don't want to give them out loads of sharp tools that could be dangerous. These are absolutely perfect. Okay, so next on my list is Liquid Fimo. Now, I didn't used to use this very much, but you'll see in the next few videos coming out I'm going to use it a little bit more, and it's such a great thing to use. So liquid clay, you pour it out onto a tile. You can mix it with mica powder, you can mix it with glitter, you can even mix it with hardened clay in different colours to get a different result. It's an absolute fantastic thing to have. It's certainly not something I would suggest if you're a complete beginner, because all of this can be really, really overwhelming unless it's your thing. I would sometimes pour it into a little heart. Now I'd have it on a tile that I can move straight away. Pour it in, add some glitter and pop it in the oven how it is, bring it out, and then you've got a little heart in whatever colour you want. Liquid Fimo is opaque naturally unless you have it really thin, so not very much on the bottom at all. The more you put in it, so the thicker that it is, the more opaque it will be, and you can actually turn it any colour you want. So one of the great things with Liquid Fimo is that you can actually use chalk with it and colour it any colour you like. Now I recently published a video where I put white chalk with it and I put it on my ice cream, and the idea is that you can turn it any colour you like, and you can make this into a really, really fancy design. They also do come in liquid Sculpey as well. Now I've used Liquid Fimo more than I have liquid Sculpey, but as you can see there are different colours. Now for some reason Liquid Fimo in the pot tends to be a little bit more yellowy, whereas the Sculpey is definitely more white, and I need to do a review of these two together actually, just to see what they do differently. But I know that Fimo liquid does go quite clear, and you can make things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see right through, but it does give a really cool effect if you're making window hanging things. Perfect for that. Okay, so next on the list is alcohol inks. You can use alcohol inks with any form of polymer clay and turn it into a really, really cool design. I am quite a newbie with this myself, so I have done a few videos, but I haven't done anything extravagant, so I've really sort of just tested it out. Now in one of my videos I have tried it with liquid clay, and it gave it a stained glass effect, and it looked really, really cool. I use a load of clashing colours together quite often, and colours that you wouldn't expect to go together, and I really love them. With anything with alcohol inks, it's best literally to try it out. I've tried it on polymer clay translucent, and I've also tried it with liquid clay as well. Absolutely love it, so I do recommend trying this technique out as well. Okay, so when you've got the basics, what do you do with polymer clay? Well, you can cover things like this. So this is going to be a future video. I'm going to cover it and make something fancy out of this, and you can put it straight in the oven. So you can put the clay on the inside so it flattens and you'd be able to see it on the outside, or you can do a more 3D design on the outside. When baking polymer clay on something, just be aware that obviously they do come with plastic parts here, and this will need to come off if you are putting that in the oven. Okay, so moving on to glitters. Now you can use any glitter you want in polymer clay. You can buy the cheap stuff, you can buy the expensive stuff. I prefer nail art glitter, and I've recently done a video on nail art glitter, so I won't go on and on. However, these do look a lot better in polymer clay than the normal craft glitter that you can get from any shop. They have a more high quality look to it, and they can make your projects look absolutely amazing. So for example, this is Paper Mania, and this is called Tinsel Red, and this is card making glitter. So, and it absolutely works perfectly fine in polymer clay. So I've used that before, and these are nail art glitters, work absolutely great as well. The dust in nail art glitter does cover Fimo a bit better than it does with this, but it really does depend on what look you're going for, and I do recommend trying lots of different ones for your own style. Okay, lastly, so I recently bought some gloss varnish by Fimo. This is great, but it doesn't go on as heavy as I thought it would, but it does give a sheen, so it's not one of these thick varnishes that looks sort of overpowering or anything, but that's really good. I quite like this, so I do recommend getting some gloss varnish. And lastly, super glue. Now I say lastly super glue because polymer clay has a tendency to sometimes not stick to it, sometimes stick to it in the wrong place, and sometimes it can make it go white as well, so it doesn't look great. So where possible, super glue for me is the absolute last resort, where I'm not able to remake something but I can get it back together and it looks okay. And then quite often I will cover it up with, say, glitter or something like that. I find that if it needs sticking with glue, then I haven't made it properly. So I do avoid at all costs, but as I said, sometimes it is necessary. If I'm putting polymer clay on something else, then I will use it. Okay, so let's talk stamps. They all come in completely different shapes and sizes, all different styles, and it really does depend on what you're looking to create as to what you get. So I love this one because I love swirls, and as you can see, I've used it 100 times over, and these can be scrubbed and cleaned really easy with a scrubbing brush. I haven't, obviously, but it's because I use it so much, and the colour actually doesn't come off, so I'm quite lucky with that. So then there's this one here. This is like a crossed hatch effect, really nice, and they're all really different, and they all are going to do something different. So it's best to test out what you like. Some people might prefer pressing down on something, some people might prefer rolling and getting that sort of effect. And again, this one's a roller. I would use it like this and roll that way. So there's so many that you can actually try. The other option is creating patterns yourself. So for example, if I liked these two together, I could make part pattern with this and part pattern with that, and then crate it in some clay, make myself a stamp that would do both at the same time. So there's an awful lot of experimenting you can do with just a few stamps as well. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you found that useful. I'm going to link as much as I can in the description below, so you've got an idea of where to get things from. I do recommend everything that I've used today, but don't feel like you've got to go out and buy absolutely everything to start with polymer clay, because you can use all sorts of weird tools. And that brings me on to other videos. So if you're not done, have a look at my weird tools video, and I've got a few beginner tutorials that you can make a start with. So if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and please subscribe. See you next time.